Anyway, let's listen. Let's watch the the beans on toast equivalent of political commentary from friend of the show, one of our favorites, Cuck Todd.
Rule out the no-fly zone.
Wow, that's the audio is really.
Think it's possible.
3 months. Love you, Ajan Donkeys.
Why rule out the no-fly zone? Why not make Putin think it's possible?
I wonder why. Let's think for a moment. And I posted about this on my Instagram story last night. There was a YouGov study there was a YouGov poll that was conducted, okay, that I found to be really, really, really interesting, okay? I found to be really, really strange, really interesting. The YouGov poll showed, and we've covered it before, I believe, on the stream as well, but the YouGov poll showed that...
At HasanAbi,
where
10
is it?
months. You
Here.
helped me through dark
The
times.
YouGov poll from a couple days back showed there is net support in the United States for sanctions, sending money to Ukraine, sending weapons to Ukraine, sending troops to NATO countries, and a no-fly zone at plus 25. Ukraine in NATO, plus 20. Cyber attack on Russia is at 0. Send soldiers to help, not fight, minus 5. Drones on Russia, minus 19. Airstrike Russia, minus 33. Send soldiers to fight, minus 35. Now, the reason why Americans, and I'm not faulting them, I am faulting, however, Cuck Todd and the media. The reason why I am not faulting Americans for this is because we have very deliberately and very carefully in our media manufactured consent and have made no-fly zones seem like something entirely different than boots on the ground military warfare. For some reason, well, not for some reason, because we do this to Libya. We try to do it in Syria. We try to do it in other countries. So we have to justify doing it so people don't fucking think what no-fly zones actually are. And you can do a no-fly zone for countries that you can bully mercilessly with your imperial war machine, but you can't do that to fucking Russia. For the same reason that you can't actually fucking put boots on the ground inside of Ukraine and get into an active hot war with Russia. No-fly zone and sending soldiers in the fight are the exact same thing. Because people don't understand what a no-fly zone is. Chuck Todd knows better, but he's a fucking piece of shit, and he's lying to the American people. He's misinforming the American people. Okay? A no-fly zone means you have to enforce it. It means you have to have planes, American planes or NATO country planes, flying sometimes from NATO countries into Ukrainian airspace and shoot down Russian planes. Okay? That is how no-fly zones work, but Americans don't know this. Okay? And the reason why they don't know this, the reason why they don't understand it, and I do not fault them for this, is because clearly if they didn't think of the consequences, if they didn't think of the consequences of a fucking sending soldiers in the fight, they wouldn't say they wouldn't say minus 35 on that. You get it? They get World War III. They get nuclear holocaust. They get that this will cause that. But they think this is different than this. It's because we've done it time and time again, and it's because we've propagandized no-fly zones as though it's something different than boots on the ground military warfare. No-fly zones have to be enforced by American pilots if we're doing it with Americans. They have to be enforced by with American air superiority. They have to be enforced by shooting down Russian fighter jets. Okay? It's not some magical barrier. You don't go Wingardium Leviosa on Ukraine and it fucking, lift up Ukraine. Okay? It's not Harry Potter. It's war.
Gigahaz.
But people don't get that, which is what people want. No, they don't. They don't want that. If I were to describe what a no-fly zone is to many people, and I have so far, people have asked me literally in the DMs, since I've posted that, like, what the fuck is the difference? Like, I don't really understand this. Like, can you explain this to me? And every time I have this conversation, people recognize it's like, oh shit, I had no idea. My bad. And that is an anecdote that corresponds to the data. Because the data shows that they clearly have a different perspective on sending troops in, but they don't have that same perspective on a no-fly zone.
First, again, my admiration for President Zelensky has no bounds. And if I were in his shoes, I'd be asking and looking for everything possible from everyone in every place around the world. And as I said, what we've already done is extraordinary. And just to remind people, over the past year alone, from the United States alone, more than $1 billion in security assistance, lethal defensive weapons that are being put to very effective service by Ukrainians now in defense of their country, and other measures that we're looking at going forward. Just in the last week alone, Chuck, we have delivered more than $200 million worth of security assistance into the hands of Ukrainians. So all of that is ongoing, all of that's continuing. The President's been very clear about one thing all along as well, which is we're not going to put the United States in direct conflict with Russia, not have American planes flying against Russian planes, or our soldiers on the ground in Ukraine, because for everything we're doing for Ukraine, the President also has a responsibility to not get us into a direct conflict, a direct war with Russia, a nuclear power, and risk a war that expands even beyond Ukraine.
Wow. Even the fucking warmongers are saying this. I wonder if we will learn a lesson from this. Probably not. I'm sure that the media, which has a responsibility to accurately tell the truths and to accurately disseminate information, will do their due diligence and describe the difference between a no-fly zone, or rather the similarities between a no-fly zone and just like fucking the likelihood of World War III happening in the aftermath of boots-on-the-ground military warfare and hot war between Russia and any NATO country due to Article 5. Probably not, though. Probably Cuck Todd will keep fucking crying and saying, oh, let's go. Let's get it. No-fly zone, baby. Let's do it.
To Europe. That's clearly not our interest. What we're trying to do is end this war in Ukraine, not start a larger one.
Let me ask you this.
And by the way, keep in mind keep in mind what a no-fly zone, just so people understand, too, what a no-fly zone means. It means that if you declare a space no-fly and a Russian plane flies through it, it means we have to shoot it down.
Wait, why didn't they fucking describe it like this when they were talking about Libya? That's interesting. I wonder why. I wonder why the expectation of a no-fly zone was like way, way fucking higher. That's crazy, man. It's weird. It's like, oh, because Libya can't do anything. That's right. It's because they don't have fucking nukes. Oh, that's totally, dude. There you go. That's why the HasanAbi doctrine stands. Okay, if you want to make sure that you can have a fucking, make sure that you have any sort of sovereignty, any sort of autonomy from Western imperialist superpowers that want to fuck your shit up, gotta get nukes, my boy. Rule number 1: get those motherfucking nukes, baby. Russia is recruiting Syrians for urban combat in Ukraine, U.S. officials say. Moscow is looking to help from foreign fighters to take cities, including Kyiv. Nice. Okay, that's cool. That won't be bad. That seems good. I'm stealing that Orochimaru joke, by the way. I just did the yoinking jutsu, okay? Yeah, it's called the yoinking your meme jutsu. The Americans think this is how a no-fly zone works. Didn't the BBC explain that that they would need to shoot any anti-aircraft vehicles and SAM equipment on the ground too, and these could be placed outside the zone but still fire into it? All seems to get even more complicated. Yes. Doinking no jutsu. Hasingan? Yeah, exactly. Anyway, let's hear from yet another politician that would normally be hyper fucking reactionary, bloodthirsty, just salivating from the mouth on potentially doing more war. Let's hear what he has to say about enforcing a no-fly zone.
The Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, the Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator Rubio, thanks for joining us this morning. You were on that Zoom yesterday with President Zelensky. Are you and your colleagues now more open to a no-fly zone?
Look, a no-fly zone has become a catchphrase. I'm not sure a lot of people fully understand what that means. That means...
Dog, the reason why it's a fucking catchphrase is because of you and other pieces of shit like you.
22 months.
You deliberately misrepresented and lied to the American people for many years whenever you wanted to do a no-fly zone anywhere else. But now you want to do a no-fly zone to a fucking nation with a nuclear arsenal, and you can't do that anymore. So you're like, who did this? We're all looking for the guy who did this. You're in the fucking hot dog suit. Okay, you crashed your hot dog car into the fucking storefront, and now you're going, who did this? How did this happen? Why do Americans think that fucking a no-fly zone means like a weird protective barrier or a suggestion, like and not all-out war? Ooh, you did this. You did this to justify this policy in other countries that you were able to do this to. Okay.
Means flying AWACS 24 hours a day.
Ooh, someone should probably spank me or spank whoever did this on their bare butt. We should go conduct an investigation, but let them get away with it in the aftermath.
Means the willingness to shoot down and engage Russian airplanes in the sky. That means, frankly, you can't put those planes up there unless you're willing to knock out the anti-aircraft systems that the Russians have deployed, and not just in Ukraine, but in Russia and also in Belarus. So basically, a no-fly zone, if people understood what it means World War III. It means starting World War III. So I think there are a lot of things we can do to help Ukraine protect itself, both from airstrikes and missile strikes. But I think that people need to understand what a no-fly zone means. It's not some rule you pass that everybody has to oblige by. It's the willingness to shoot down the aircrafts of the Russian Federation, which is basically the beginning of World War III.
How about this provision of fighter jets? We would provide the fighter jets to Poland, other Eastern European nations. They would send the jets they now have to Ukraine. Do you support that?
I do. If that can be done, that would be great. I do have concerns about a couple things, and that is sort of, can they actually fly them, given the amount of anti-aircraft capabilities that the Russians possess and continue to have deployed in the region. By the way, yesterday was a terrible day for the Russian Air Force. They're losing. They don't have air control either there. But generally speaking, it's something I'd be supportive of, and we should do what we can to help them.
The president has resisted banning Russian oil imports. Of course, that would send gas prices soaring even more here in this country. Do you support it?
I do, and I don't think, I think that's something that you can construct a plan to phase that in pretty rapidly, and you could use reserves for the purposes of buffering that. But we have more than enough ability in this country to produce enough oil to make up for the percentage that we buy from Russia. And by the way, this notion that somehow banning Russian oil would raise prices on American consumers is an admission that this guy, that this killer, that this butcher, Vladimir Putin, has leverage over us. Why would we want that leverage to continue? Why would we have someone like him to have the power to raise gas prices on Americans, which is basically, if he cuts us off, what would happen in the reverse? So I think we have enough of it. We should produce more American oil and buy less Russian oil, or none at all.
Yeah, dude, that's... How are we going to do that? It's like fucking Nuke Andes being like, nuclear energy is the way. Okay, it takes 10 years to fucking build a nuclear plant? How are we going to do that? How are we going to do that right now? Even if you're not, let's say for a moment that you genuinely are thinking about America's national security, okay, and you're not actually just being like a fucking piece of shit for your corporate benefactors, okay? How are you gonna do that, dude? How are you gonna do that right now in the interim period? Oh, so unlike the nuclear boys, what he's saying is faster. And more likely to occur, even though, from what I understand, fracking is not even as efficient as obviously other methods. and therefore, I don't know if it's even true or not. I don't know. I don't know if you can truly stabilize prices by increasing fracking. That is, of course, before you recognize some of the negative consequences of fracking. Okay.
You're facing some criticism from fellow legislators for tweeting out a picture of President Zelensky during his Zoom with Congress yesterday. The ambassador asked members not to do that because it would endanger Zelensky. Why did you ignore that request?
First of all, she said that well into the call. Second, there's no security risk in that at all. Perhaps she was under the impression that the Zoom call was a secret. It had been broadly reported, like multiple outlets, maybe even ABC had tweeted it was at 9:30. There were over 300 people on this call. The details of the call were emailed to a bunch of people.
Not allowing for no-fly zones, but giving other countries just to prevent World War III. Same, Sam, no. It depends on what Russia considers to be an act of fucking war. I think leading up to this moment, you can't really stop a country from receiving weapons, right? Like, unless you're literally the country's leader, okay? But even then, it's hard. You know what I mean? You can sneak those fucking little AR-15s in bread baskets, baby. You know what I mean? USAID style. So even then, it's hard. Even if you're like trying to prevent a fucking military coup from occurring, a violent military coup from occurring in your country, it's still hard to stop America from giving you guns, giving your citizens guns. So you're fucking not gonna be able to do that to a foreign nation, regardless. But you can't put the F-16s in the bread baskets, okay? You can put Javelin missiles inside of food, supposedly food supply. Oh my God, my brother is killing me. You guys probably can't hear it, but in the background, it's like, what? He literally opens all the fucking doors in the house. He opens all the doors in the house and then starts drilling and you know, using power tools. And it's like, why are all the doors open? At least close them so I don't have to fucking hear it. He's like, nah, brother, you have to hear it.
And it was a nondescript picture, unlike any of the other ones, just like the other ones you've seen on the air. So there's no security risk there.
You don't believe you put him at risk?
No.
I want to also bring...
It's such a stupid fucking... Oh, God.
Bring up something that one of your fellow Republican senators, Lindsey Graham, has repeated again yesterday. Earlier in the week, he called for Russians to assassinate Vladimir Putin. Was that responsible?
Well, look, people are watching what's happening in Ukraine and what this man is doing to these people, what this monster's doing to human beings, and they're very angry about it. And obviously, you know, at the end of the day, I do think Vladimir Putin's going to face some problems internally in Russia. How the Russians seek to take care of it is up to them. I'm not sure he was calling for U.S. action in that regard. I think what he was basically trying to say, at least my reading of it, is I wish someone would take this guy out and remove him from power one way or the other. I think the whole world wishes that. But that's not something we can impose. That's something that has to happen organically and has to happen internally. And maybe it will, because he's not just facing a military catastrophe in Ukraine where he really can't win. I mean, the two outcomes he has before him are a costly military victory followed by a costly long-term occupation or a quagmire. But he's also facing a second front at home where his economy is headed to third world status here pretty rapidly.
So far, he appears completely undeterred by that. Do you believe he's acting in a rational manner?
I think he's acting in a manner he believes is rational, because you have to understand this is a guy who views himself as a historic figure. He believes his legacy is going to be secured by being the person that restored great Russia. You can't be a greater Russia without Ukraine under your thumb. And that's what he's pursuing now. I also believe that he's a person that cannot survive, for example, being humiliated, and he can't survive in power if it looks like he backed down to NATO. So I think that creates a real opportunity here for danger. I don't think his perceptions are the same as our perceptions about the world, about the way things are going and so forth. This guy's also an authoritarian leader. He doesn't get a lot of bad news. They don't report a lot of bad news to him because it doesn't get you promoted. So I unfortunately think we're entering probably the most dangerous part of this conflict because as he begins to realize he can't make the...
He's not wrong, but there are, of course, as always, as is the case of Marco Rubio, he's also not completely correct as well. Once again, ultimately, it does not matter. If Vladimir Putin wants to restore the Russian Empire, there are limitations as to what we in the Western world can do, right? But here's one thing we can do, okay? Even if his ultimate goal is to overtake Ukraine in its entirety, there is no reason not to try to do democracy and diplomacy leading up to this, okay? All you will lose in that circumstance is a little bit of fucking time. All you will lose in that situation is 1 day of negotiations or a week worth of negotiations. Okay? I keep saying this all the time. Like, even if it is, you're missing the fact that no Ukrainian wants that, which means long-term occupation with the population fighting for freedom. I get that. I understand that. First of all, the unfortunate reality is it doesn't matter what the Ukrainian people want, because the Ukrainian people also want a no-fly zone. Why is that not happening? Well, because the rest of the world is not going to risk nuclear holocaust. And that is technically a good reason, for the record. I'm sorry. Okay? Ukrainians want to join NATO, and yet they weren't able to. Why? Because, again, nuclear holocaust. Ukraine is Russia's red line alongside Georgia. And either country being added on to NATO would mean would have happened. What is happening right now would have happened if either country was slated to be added into NATO. Okay? Which is precisely the reason why, with the exception of the United States of America, other European leaders within NATO have always said, we don't want Ukraine to be a part of NATO. So ultimately, it doesn't matter what Ukrainians want, okay? It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. So now, having said all of that, there is one person, I feel bad for any Ukrainian viewer listening to this, but it's the reality. It is the dark and harsh reality, okay? What I'm describing is not something that I consider to be good or bad, okay? I want to help Ukrainian people, okay? I get it. I understand. Fighting against an imperial superpower at your doorstep that you have historical associations with is devastating, okay? It's not great. You have fucking families dying. That's not a good thing, okay? Do you realize what Putin's terms are? Of course I do. And I'm even saying that maybe Putin doesn't even care about the terms. Right now, Putin is shelling the fuck out of Ukrainian cities, okay? Mariupol being one of them. I have a friend whose grandmother is literally in Mariupol. She cannot contact her. His aunts and her grandmother living in Mariupol right now, and she cannot contact her at all. They have no idea what's going on there, okay? That's devastating. That fucking sucks. Putin. That's terrifying. That's horrific. And Vladimir Putin is almost single-handedly responsible for this, okay? In a weird way, unlike any other country, Vladimir Putin is almost single-handedly responsible for the death and destruction, okay, that is falling upon the Ukrainian people. I want to establish that. I want to make that clear. On the other hand, however, that shelling is going to continue regardless, right? That shelling is going to continue until they overtake the city. So, there is one thing. There are two things that you could do. Just let it keep happening and give more guns and not anything else, okay? And it's at a certain point, it's not going to, more guns are not going to help, okay? Or come to the table with the United States of America willing to make concessions to Russia. Concessions that Ukrainians might not enjoy, concessions that Ukrainians might not
15
want.
Months, let's go.
But concessions that need to be made in order for a ceasefire or negotiations to happen. Now, even if Putin makes these demands and some of them are met, like the recognition of LPR and DPR as autonomous regions that are still within Ukrainian borders, because that was the Minsk agreement, and that is, from what I understand, still the attitude and the opinion that he has towards moving towards a ceasefire, recognizing the recognition of Crimea as Russian territory, okay? The denazification of Ukraine and the demilitarization of Ukraine. Now, the last two are bullshit. White savior Andy take. First of all, the Ukrainian people are whiter than I am, okay, in the eyes of European leadership. So I don't know how the fuck I'm white, but like, pretty funny take from you, okay? But also, what I'm trying to describe is this. If Vladimir Putin's goals are to reinstitute the Russian Empire, and he's not going to stop with Crimea, okay, and that he actually wants to take the entirety of Ukraine, then nothing changed before that diplomatic conversation. Yesterday and tomorrow will be the same. There is no reason not to try. That's what I mean. People, on the other hand, keep fucking saying, oh no, we'll just keep sending thoughts and prayers to Ukraine. Fuck diplomacy. You can't do that. You can't negotiate with terrorists. Okay? You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't negotiate with terrorists. Like, okay, well then, yesterday and tomorrow will remain the same regardless. Okay?
19 months.
So make concessions and start fighting from a worse position? There is no worse position to fight. What the fuck do you mean? In the aftermath of those concessions, what? What will change if those concessions are made? Additional time for Russian troops to resupply and regroup, right? That's what they said about the ceasefires as well. Oh, this is an opportunity for Russia to regroup and resupply. Okay, same for Ukraine. It's an opportunity for Ukraine to regroup and resupply as well. The Ukrainian forces, I mean. If the leveling of Ukrainian cities is an inevitability because Vladimir Putin is a psychopathic, warlord, then it's clear to me, if you listen to at least enough American and European leaders, that we are not going to change our attitude about sending troops into Ukraine. That's not going to change. The reason why it's not going to change is because sending troops into Ukraine means fighting for the first time in a very long time, state-on-state warfare between nuclear superpowers, which is very different than World War II, because we are living in a post-nuclearized world. Okay? So, what about the jets? Any thoughts on them? Russia considers resupplying Ukrainian fighter jets to be an act of war beyond even sanctions. So much so that Poland has routinely denied the reports that say Poland was going to send jets into Ukraine.
17 months, Piker.
Okay. I feel like I repeat this every single day, and yet either there are new chatters that come in and ask that question, or there are old chatters that refuse to recognize what this means. And they just don't, they love hearing the same argument a million times.
Tactical gains on the ground that he wants to make. I think he's willing to escalate and do things that, unfortunately, would be pretty cataclysmic.
It feels like a real dilemma. You say that Putin can't win this war, but he also...
Oh, so fake news. Glad I asked. Watching. What? Can't tell if you mean like fake news as in I'm disseminating fake news, or I don't know what's going on. There's a lot of like new chatters who keep saying like I'm disseminating misinformation. I wonder if it's because there's a new Twitch policy that they think they can abuse to try to get me banned off this platform.
Seems pretty determined not to lose. So what can we do?
Well, that's one of the great challenges of these moments. I think there are, if you look throughout history, there are times when you reach points like this.
Or maybe not.
Where there doesn't seem to be an easy way out. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I wake up tomorrow and read that there's been this great negotiation and peace is here and there's people are going to be able to get humanitarian aid and the shelling is going to stop. But that's what my heart hopes for. But my mind, what I know about this man and know about Russia and know about its intentions and know about history tells me we got some ways to go yet until we reach a point like that, and it may not, and it's not going to be a pretty journey.
I just feel it should be Ukraine at the negotiating table deciding its fate, not its so-called NATO allies. Dude, come on, man. Be realistic, please. Like, yeah, that sounds wonderful and beautiful, and you know, that would be great, but there is nothing. Like, that's not a real concept, okay? Nothing gets done in this world, on this fucking planet, that small nations don't make choices for themselves or their own citizens without the go-ahead or clear guidance or allowance by some superpower. It could be a sovereign, regional superpower.
2 months.
Like Russia, or it could be the global hegemonic power, the United States of America. Okay, or the competing superpower that is competing with the United States on becoming a global hegemonic superpower, China. That is how this works. It's the sad but true reality. There is no, I don't know how else to describe it. There is no decision that the Ukrainian leadership can make for itself. Ukrainian service member helped evacuate civilians near Irpin. 3 civilians were killed and Russian mortar rounds landed, striking a route used by civilians to fleeing southwest towards Kyiv. I mean, computer enhanced. Yeah, I mean, this is going to keep happening, by the way. Of course it's going to keep happening. I don't even understand how the fuck these dudes can't just, like, not have Nazi shit on. Like, they don't even care. They literally just don't give a shit. They're like, nah, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to keep showing it. Like, how do you